Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ian Mann, and I'm joined on the panel today via Zoom with Ms. Gail Anderson and Ms. Diane Knight. The secretary and administrative personnel today is Mrs. Crystal Harland, and the assessor is Mr. Nathan Kupfer. To the Zoom participants of this hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along on the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing has concluded, you may leave the meeting. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all of the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1 through 8 on our docket today. Mrs. Harland, will you please affirm the assessor's evidence and the first applicant's testimony?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Assessor, would you please state your full name?
Nathan Kupfer.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, would you please state your full name?
Rocky Neufeld.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 1 on the list is the street address at 160 Donald. Mr. Kupfer, would you please lead us through your brief and give us your evidence with respect to that matter? I understand the issue is valuation.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. So this is file number 24-4337. The roll number is 120-933-74000. And the street address is 160 Donald Street. The owner is IG Investments Management Ltd. This is a surface downtown parking lot. The land area of 24,316 square feet. Our model has applied a 2025 assessed value using land value of $3,124,000, which I'm recommending be confirmed today. Page 2 of my brief and page 3 show photos of the subject property. Page 2, you can see we've outlined the property here for your reference. Page 4 provides more of a street view image of the subject. This property is located on the corner of Donald Street and York Avenue. Page 3 of my brief shows the sales history for the subject. As you can see, it has two older sales here, one in 2012 and one in 2006. Our valuation isn't based on either of these sales, and I haven't investigated them based on how old they are. Like I said, we're using land value for this methodology, so pages 5, 6, and 7 are all pertaining to income, so they're not really relevant to the assessment that's been assigned here and appealed today. Page 8 of my brief shows our land sale comparables. We've selected six downtown parcels for you here, downtown, within downtown, and the exchange. I should mention that this parcel is zoned M for multi-use. Likewise, comparables 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all zoned M for multi-use. And I would say that comparables 3 and 4 are probably the closest, at least in terms of proximity to the subject property. As you can see, the land size varies quite a bit throughout my my comparables table here, with some smaller parcels and some larger ones. They've produced a mean of $133.93 and a median of $132.97. None of these figures have been adjusted at all for time. This is just sale price divided by land size for the sale price per square foot. Underneath that, it has a breakdown per classification. This property only has one classification. It's 60T, so the entire 24,316 square feet is being included within that classification. You can see at a rate of $128.48 for a total land value of $3,124,000. As you can see, that puts us fairly consistent with the land sale comparables that I provided just above that. Pages 9, 10, 11, all the way through to 16 relate to the income and expense mailer, which was submitted for this property. No issues with compliance here. However, again, we are on land value, so we haven't really taken into account the income and expense for this specific property. And then beginning on page 17, I have comparables. The first set of comparables are based on parking rates. Again, we haven't used a parking rate in our valuation. And then beginning on page 27 are photos of the land sale comparables for your reference. So if you want to get a better idea of where the land sale comparables are located and the shape, you can begin on page 27 for your reference. And that's about all I have for this brief. So again, I'd like to recommend that the 2025 assessment be confirmed, $3,124,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, have you questions?
Hang on 1 second. Sorry. Okay. I lost the screen for a minute. Yes, I do. One sec. So you're confirming that the property, page 1, is a surface parking lot?
Correct.
And how long has it been a surface parking lot?
I don't know.
Well, you have 1969 as a year, and obviously the land was made before then. Would it be fair to use 1969?
It could be. I can't confirm that.
So for 55 years, it's been in use for surface parking. And is there, to your knowledge, is there any reason to consider that it would be used for anything different?
Yes, if it was sold, it could become any type of
Sorry,
property.
I didn't ask if it was being sold. To your knowledge, I said, is there any other use that is going to be contemplated for this property?
Yes.
And what would that use be?
Anything which is allowable under the zoning M multi-use.
Again, you're not being responsive. I asked to your knowledge. I'm not asking for a concept. Is there anything to your knowledge?
I really don't understand the question then.
Are there developments being planned? Is there any permits that you know? Any applications to the city planning department for development?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay. And surface parking lots in the city of Winnipeg are all done by the income approach, are they not?
No.
And why not? Why are some done that way and some not?
Our model produces a land value for all properties in the city. And if that land value eclipses the value as improved, then that's the value in use, and that's what is certified.
Does your model know how to do a highest and best use analysis?
Again, it chooses the use which is deemed most profitable, the use which has the highest value.
Did you review the highest and best use?
No,
If your model's suggesting that it could be developed and used for something more profitable, doesn't your model need proof that a situation exists?
no,
Why not?
because it doesn't.
Um, and is not the highest and best use relevant to the definition of market value?
It is.
And what's your working definition of market value then?
Which page of my brief are you referring to?
I'm not. It's a concept. It's a theory, but it's also in the Municipal Assessment Act.
Oh, I'm here to answer questions about the evidence which has been presented and included in my brief.
No, you're here to answer questions on the value of the
No,
property and
I'm
how
here
it's
to
derived.
answer
I'm going to
questions
interrupt
which are based
both of
on.
you right now. Mr. Neufeld, if you have an argument to make with respect to highest and best use, that can follow your evidence, and it can follow the summarization, or can be part of your summary. But at this point, I think your examination, your cross-examination of Mr. Kupfer should be limited to the evidence that he has given so far.
Well, yes, but I think what I'm uh, uh, having a difficulty with is that post-COVID, the assessment department saw that sales or rents on parking lots had declined, so they switched the process. And that's not how you do it. And I'm just trying to have this assessor see if he can provide any more information on that subject, or if he knows why this was changed. Now, I think that's fair.
Give you
But
his answer on that.
pardon me?
I've given you his answer on that.
Yes, I know. I got the answer. I just wanted to reach that point of that answer. In regards to the actual income on this property, you have provided a statement on page starting page 9, I believe. Did you review that?
Briefly.
On the top of page 9, there's a statement, has a roll number, and then it says 175 Hargrave with 1405. Do you know what that means?
Nope.
Well, this property is 160 Donald, correct?
That is the street address assigned.
And does that roll number correspond?
Yes, it does.
Is this address 175 Hargrave?
I can't say where they got that street address from.
Is this 175 Hargrave?
We have it identified as 160 Donald Street.
And are you aware that 175 Hargrave is an office building?
No, I'm here to discuss 160 Donald Street.
I'm asking you questions on your evidence. Are you aware 175 Hargrave is an office building?
No, I'm not.
Okay. The roll that was provided terminating on page 13, I can't read the income at the bottom. It's rather small. Is it can you tell me what that summary is, or is there a summary?
There's a occupancy summary listing a total occupied area and a total vacant area.
Okay, and is that area or dollars? Do you know?
It states area.
Okay. And did you there are rents listed on this page, prior pages. Did you take a look at the income that is stated on these pages, the rent rolls?
No, I'm focused on 160 Donald Street
Well, then why is this here?
because this is what was submitted for this roll number.
Okay. And you are aware, I'm assuming you read the letter that was attached to it starting on page 14.
Yes, I'm aware there's a letter starting on page 14.
Did you read it?
Yes, I have.
And so you are then aware that there are 4 rolls here that have their income and expenses that are mixed.
Yes, again, we are valuing this on land, not relying on this information. I don't know why you've chosen to submit this as 4 roll
Okay,
numbers.
well, this isn't time for argument. I'm just asking you if you were aware what the letter said, which you provided.
Yes.
Okay. And your sales comparables, do you know what their usages were for the sale? I'm going to go through them one by one. I assume they're the same as the next one.
I assume they were used for parking.
Did you research any of them?
I researched the ones which I identified for you as the best comparables on 175 Donald and 330 Donald.
What's 175 Donald being used for?
At the time of the sale, it was used for parking. Now it's being developed.
What was it purchased for?
$405,000
What? Not how much. What was it purchased for?
for development.
And what does that development consist of?
Mixed-use commercial and apartment buildings.
Is it part of a larger parcel amalgamation?
It is now.
Does that not characterize the sale as an assemblage value?
Yes, it does.
Does an assemblage value fit under the definition of market value to your knowledge?
Yes, it does.
Okay, that's your statement. And do you have any sort of background on determining what an assemblage value is? Do you know what it is?
Well,
Which
Mr.
page of my
Neufeld,
brief are you referring to now?
Okay.
There, Mr. Neufeld, you asked what his
Yes, I understand.
knowledge is
Sorry.
going to be, and now to challenge that answer based on
I got it.
with his expertise isn't fair.
I know I'm going in a circle. Apologize. And the other one you mentioned was number 4. Is that correct?
Correct.
And is that in use as a parking lot?
Yes, it is.
Did that sale transfer through land titles?
Yes, it did.
Do you have any information on that sale?
Only what's in my brief.
Do you know the vendor and purchaser?
Only what's in my brief.
Do you have access to a search device called Sabre?
Only what's in my brief.
Do you have access to a search device called Sabre?
Which page of my brief are you referring to?
I'm asking about the methodology. I'm not talking about the brief. Do you have access to a search device called Sabre?
It's not relevant to my presentation or the evidence that's been provided. Thank you.
For the board's information, Sabre is a search engine that is co-sponsored by the City of Winnipeg Assessment Department and the Real Estate Board. And it's one of the tool we use for searching. And you'll see excerpts from it in both the assessor's brief and appellant's briefs. It's sales. Now,
Which page of my brief is there a reference to that in?
I think we're getting off topic here again.
Yeah,
Mr.
I know.
Newfeld,
I'm just trying to
and
get to
what
my
does-
point. One last question on this issue. In a search on the Sabre system, which is co-sponsored by the City of Winnipeg Assessment Department, it only lists a $1 sale. Are you aware of that?
What page of my brief are you referring to? None of that has been entered as evidence.
Fine, very well. I'm accusing you of misleading the board by providing a $1 sale. What say you to that?
It sounds like bullshit.
Okay, gentlemen, please. If, again, Mr. Kupfer has provided the evidence on that. If you have some issues, Mr. Newfeld, with respect to the limitations of that, you can offer up evidence of your own with respect to that, and we'll be up to the board and the panel today to determine the weight applied to everyone's evidence, and from that we will make our determination.
Okay, no, that's fair. I mean, the scope of cross-examination is not limited to just saying it's not my brief, I won't testify to it. It goes to speak to the methodology and the underlying theory. And so it is within the scope of a question. And if the answer can be yes, no, I don't know, whatever. I don't think the the respondent's answer was an appropriate one, so that's fine.
Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just scanning to the end here. Just give me 1 second. Sorry, no, those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, have you any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Knight?
No, sir.
Mr. Kupfer, I have some questions with respect to the choice, for want of a better word, of using the land sales comparison approach versus the income approach. Is it the model that makes that determination, or is it as a result of the inputs made, or is it your determination, or is it a personal assessment as to which model or which method is being used?
It's a determination made by our model. Our model will produce a base land value for all properties within it. Generally speaking, it doesn't play a factor when we're dealing with improved properties, office type properties, as the value is generally going to be higher based on the income stream created. However, with these properties where there are very few improvements, it's not uncommon that the land value produced will eclipse what is produced through the income stream. Like is the case here, the income value, the parking value would have been lower than the land value produced. So the model has certified the land value in this case.
Okay, so to put it in layman's terms that I might use, the model could calculate or could assess two values and choose the higher one? Is that?
That's right. Yes, sir. That's right. The model would determine that the land value is the maximally productive value of the two.
Okay. And from the pictures, it would appear that this parking lot is paved. Is that correct? Or am I looking at the pictures in error?
You are correct. It is paved.
Okay. And how about electrical services to the spots? Is that present as well?
It's a fair question. Based on the photos, I can't see any in the photos, but I can't see every stall, in fairness, so I can't say with certainty.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have anything further. Mr. Newfeld, your evidence, please.
Thank you. Our evidence is a bit difficult, and there's an unusual situation that we were dealing with specific to this property. What it concerned was that we couldn't find the breakdowns of the individual lots. There are 4 parking areas in this complex: 160 Donald, 325 York, which we call 155 Hargrave, 175 Hargrave, which is an office building with some land to park on, 330 St. Mary, which has some land to park on, as well as underground parking. So all 4 of these properties are managed by one parking company, and what they provided for us in the reference years were gross statements without breakdown. The process of going through these and breaking them down one by one is we weren't able to do it in time, and even today I can only give you an estimate. We've changed parking companies, and the new one has giving more detailed statements for the future, but that's the future. As this relates to the act, as we know that providing information, as I warned the assessor of in the letter, we're always mindful of the section of the Act 56.3.1. However, this is not a violation because we gave you what we had. Now we have to delve deeper into it and do a breakdown. So all I have for you today is the estimate of the net income on the property in 2022, and the property had traditionally been operating at around an income level of about $80,000 to $90,000 per year net. With previous management, that did go up a bit with the return of the jets, because we do a lot of, I say we because this is the building I'm in right now. This is our parking lot. We do a lot of event parking, so that value went up. And in COVID, like everywhere else, it dipped. Surprisingly, our lots performed better in COVID than most lots across the city, because the bulk of our leases had parking attached to them, and the tenants had to continue to pay their leases whether they were here or not. They had to continue to pay their parking. But again, this tells you our problem about separating the parking income from a lease on the building and applying it to the parking lot for which it is actually earned. And that's the concern we have. The last statement where and we also changed property managers in between, but that's our problem again too. The last statement that we provided the city of Winnipeg for 2020, before all these changes and before COVID, was a net income of $70,687, and that the city has that. It's in the last brief. That's the last one we had. Now, working with our property manager, the numbers and this one is ending in December 2020, so it was impacted by COVID. We lost the event parking and most of the casual parking, and very little of the monthlies. So that's a depressed number. And previous years had indicated an NOI of about 120,000. And so as I'm going along here, these are all estimates verbally provided, which we haven't been able to provide in writing yet. But so 20 was 70,000, 21 was about 90,000, and 22 had climbed to about 110,000 net, because of the return of our casual parking events, which didn't hit. That's the working number now, and I'll tell you that there's some degree of variance in that as far as the error. These are what we've done is run through all of our income sources, first with the 2 buildings, 175 Hargrave and 330 St. Mary's, and identified those parkers with their stalls that they were in to look for the income to attribute it, and then go to the list of the casual and the event parking. Not highly accurate. I'd even suggest as much as a 25% error is possible on this. The expenses were easier to categorize on that, because the major expense being property taxes was easy to figure out. So this is verbally all I have. As we were preparing this brief, knowing we did not have time to make a full submission, we just provided some sales for consideration today, and the sales were the issue with all the sales is that one has to know, was this purchased for continued use as a parking lot, or is it purchased for development? Now, the concept of highest and best use is not a simple one to simply say maximally productive. We're picking you. Legally permissible, financially feasible, and I forgot the other one. But the point is, you can't speculate it's for development when development is not imminent. That's the correct theory. Now, you can speculate it's a holding for future development, which then requires you to discount the current sales to your window when your prediction of the development will occur. So firstly, then you have to discount. Secondly, you have to have a good idea when it's going to happen. And in the modern world, the answer is unlikely, because office is in severe decline. 13 office buildings in Winnipeg are or in the process of being converted to multifamily, which is a lower highest and best use, produces less income. But that is the nature of the market. That's what the market does. So the concept of assuming it could be developed is not reasonable. It is not feasible. It's not probable. It's possible, but not probable. And there's the problem with the city model, because it doesn't understand what probable means. It's going to stay a parking lot. Now, just an interesting, on the subject of this particular lot, when the purchase was made by investors in 2006, they bought it based on the thought that there would be development on the land. So 18 years later, they're still waiting for that to happen. So that's not reasonable. So the value is based on the parking. And so all I have to offer you is the verbal workup we produced at 110,000. We haven't done a cap rate analysis, and we're not going to dispute the city's putting 5% on it. That's not an issue one way or another, because it's really the work to try to get the breakout that's required. And as a result, the value we have is 2.2 million. That's again, we preparing this was a bad day for us producing the evidence, because I certainly wasn't happy with the approach we had to take on this, but we had no other choice on this, and wherever this ends up going, we still have more work to do to isolate the income and expenses and provide something that's accurate. But speaking with our property managers, who are just down the hall from me, we think that this is a supportable number for all parties, and that comes to 2.2 million, which is a higher than last year's, which is remarkable because most parking lots suffered badly. We suffered less badly because we're hooked up with an office building where the higher degree of our income was lease supplied. That my presentation, mostly all verbal, 2.2 million based on 110,000 NOI at 5%.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Kupfer, questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Page 1 of your brief States one nearby sale was $63.03, but we believe this represented an assemblage. Which sale is this?
315 Elgin.
315 Elgin is the nearby sale comparable you're using for 160 Donald Street, correct?
No, that's a statement, just a statement on the commentary on that particular sale.
Did you develop a mean or a median for the sample size? How did you come to $60 a foot?
Certainly we did produce a mean, but we didn't feel that was relevant. Our focus here was, as you can see, the coding on the side, and this is all the coding on the side. This is from that search engine, Sabre. We're looking for just the ones marked CMPSP. And then we had to add in some VCOM, vacant commercial, as well. So our thought was to focus on the CMPSP, but of the ones that came up on that coding, the only one that there were actually, there's one in the downtown zoning area in Disraeli at 28.16 a foot. And the other one, which was Elgin, appeared to be not for development, but assemblage parking for Red River's campus. Those are the ones we looked at. Now we discounted, did not use any sale that came up coded as vacant commercial VCOM, because the coding on it does get reviewed, and people determine if the sale was for future parking use or not. It is an indication, helpful indication, but the primary indication is the judgment of the person writing the report.
Did you provide any supporting information for these comparables, such as maps or photographs, so that we can see the location, the shape of the property, that sort of thing?
No, in the long run, we weren't intending on replying to these. These were a placeholder for us to get a little bit more time to analyze the income.
Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, questions?
So just to confirm, you're saying that the property is $2.2 million, not $1,459,000?
That's correct.
And if you took that 24,316 square feet, you're coming out with a value of $90.48 a square foot?
Yeah, okay. That sounds about right. Yeah, and that's actually a good number for non-assemblage land sales in the downtown.
Okay, just wanting to confirm. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Anderson, questions?
I have no questions. Thank you for your presentation.
Mr. Neufeld, I do have some questions. The amount that you're using for your net operating income, I believe you said was $110,000. Is that fair?
Yes, that's correct.
And the determination of that net operating income included, I guess, distilling the numbers that you had been provided in the and that have been presented, and distilling those numbers from the 4 amalgamated properties to lead to the 80 stalls that are the assessed roll number ending in 74000.
Yes, that's correct. The 2 office buildings, like I said, have leases with assigned parking. As an example, Colliers has spots under the building. We have some outside ones on 175 Hargrave. We have some in 160 Donald. We have some in 325 York. So we're spread out over all of them. So the problem was always to go on a tenant by tenant basis and work with the property managers, find out who got assigned where, and then make sure that the income was attributed to it. And it's just a very long process. the number of 70,000 I provided for the year of 2020 is from statements that were done by the. We've had 3 property managers, and so this was by number 3 or 8 number, our first one. In between in 21 we had a new one, and it was changed again in 24. So the oldest one had done the breakdown for us at 70,000, but that's a COVID number, so it take it in stride. It's part of a 3-year average, but it's bad. By recovery in 23, we thought the 22 number should get the most weight.
Okay, fair enough. What I'm getting at, or what I'm leading to, is the calculation that's on page, I'm gonna have to swing back to it now. Oh, it's on page 1 of your brief. You have the same square footage as noted by the city, that being the 24,316 square feet, but you have noted as 74 stalls, whereas the city seems to have a different assessment of 80 stalls. I'm wondering if that 74 stalls has been part of the calculation of the multiple properties involved, or where did that 74 stalls come from?
Sorry, 74, maybe I'm reading, where do I say 74?
The facing page of your brief, the head, it's got the roll number, use, parking, lot size, 74 stalls, 24,316 square feet per M.
I'm reading the wrong one. Okay. I was reading the next one. 74 stalls, 24,000 feet. And the city was at 80. Oh, okay. Well, there's some, the city's counting, what do you call them? Unusable stalls, illegal stalls, or whatever you want to call it, where people just park. Our counts can't come right from the manager of the site. It's I'm just trying to point you to an overhead picture where you can see what I'm talking about.
It's okay. I'm not going to count them myself. I was just wondering what the
Oh, the assessor's page 2. On the south and the south edge of it, there's people who park there, which we don't count them, and also there's some handicap barrier-free stalls we don't count, and so our contract with Platinum Parking says 74 stalls. That's where it comes from.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further. Mr. Kupfer, any summary required?
None for me, thank you.
Mr. Neufeld?
Yeah, I'm sorry for the unorthodox presentation. As I said, we were used to seeing very detailed statements when we went to preparation. We ran out of time, and given the rules of evidence, this is primary evidence, not rebuttal evidence. I couldn't present it. We know that, and the only way I can present is in a verbal form. But we are prepared, so whatever the outcome is fine. We'll live with it, and at least we have our numbers. Thank you. Oh yes, the big point: city can't change to the value that they like because it drives a higher value. I mean, that's like saying to go to an apartment block that's on rent control and say that, well, no, you can get $2,000, just kick these people out and put in people who can afford to pay more. It doesn't happen. Or to a rundown old office and say, no, you can put real expensive tenants in here who'll pay more rent. The market does that, not a valuator or an assessor. That is that approach is misleading, and in my profession, punishable by serious sanctions. You follow the highest and best use. It's the old concept of, you could put an office building in the middle of a farmer's field, it's worth more. No, you can't. The market can decide that. You can't. The market can decide this land gets developed. Assessors can't. Thank you.
Thank you. Having heard the evidence, we will conclude that matter and move on to the next matter on the docket, that being street address of 325 York Avenue. Mr. Kupfer, can you provide your evidence with respect to this property, please?
Yes, sir. This is file number 24-4336. The roll number is 120-934-03000. Street address, as you said, is 325 York Avenue. And the owner is IG Investments Management Ltd. Again, this is a surface parking lot with M multiple use zoning. The land area is 18,233 square feet, and we have a 2025 model derived land value assessment of $2,030,000, which I'm going to recommend be maintained. Pages 2 and 3 of my brief again show photos of the subject property. As you can see, this property is adjacent, or it has a back lane separating it there between this and 160 Donald Street, the property we had just discussed. So it's quite close by. As such, I provided all the same land comparables, I believe on my page 8 again. No change there. Again, I would identify the same properties as being most applicable as they are closest in proximity. It's 175 Donald and 330 Donald Street. Underneath that, you can see the breakdown of our valuation. So using a net rate of $111.34, and that net area of 18,233 square feet is how you arrive at the $2,030,000 valuation. Beyond that, pages 9 through 17 again are the income and expense information. And beyond that, I've included photos and maps for all comparables, including the parking lot comparables and the land sale comparables, which begin on page 28 of my brief for your reference. And again, I'll recommend that that 2025 assessed value of $2,030,000 be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kupfer. Mr. Neufeld, questions?
I have no new questions that weren't asked in the previous hearing. Well, most all of them. Can we just assume they've been asked and answered? And
We can apply those questions and answers of the general nature as they related to 160, or sorry, the previous property at 160 Donald to this one, as long as that is the intention here. And Mrs. Harlan, that will be reflected on the record as I understand it.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is that acceptable, Mr. Neufeld?
yeah, that's great. I don't think. Sorry, just 1 second. I just want to see if there's anything specific to just this property. No, I don't see anything new. No, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, have you any questions?
Yes, one question on page 8 of your brief. Just wondering, in regards to the net rate per square foot of 111.34, you know, you're utilizing the same comparables, and this is adjacent to the last property. I'm just wondering what has triggered the change in the square footage amount to 111.34.
That's a fair question. To my knowledge, the only thing that would impact that would be the net area, potentially being a different size lot. Going through our mass appraisal model, it'll calculate a slightly different net rate per square foot, higher or lower based on how large or small the property is. So in this case, it seems to have calculated a slightly different rate. It's a bit lower than my comparables table, but I don't think it deserves an adjustment higher or lower either way. Like I said, it couldn't be any closer in proximity. Yeah, I believe the net rate here is a reasonable one.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions. Thank you for your presentation.
Ms. Knight, questions?
You show on page 12 the actual income for the property, correct? The 143,796.58.
We do, yes.
So if we divided that by the square foot, times it by 12 months, it's $94.64 per foot, then, correct?
I haven't done that calculation, but I'll take your word for it.
Okay. So, and you're saying 111.34. So the property only gets 94, but you think the value is 111.34?
I suppose so, yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thanks.
Thank you. And I don't have any questions. Mr. Neufeld.
Oh, okay, as I said, the situation is the same. That these are part of the 4 properties that are operating as one unit. Um, this property is has a little bit different uh, of a rental mix. As far as a bed parking, it has virtually none. Most of the lots that are on here are 24-hour reserved for 2 specific tenants in 175 Hargrave. So that's good and bad. It's good because it's consistent income, but it's also restrictive income. So historical income over the years, and this is just based on our estimates, our calculations. Um, you can see that on our report from the prior year's assessment, the assessment of 1,547,000. So that was based on approximately 74,000 of NOI. We know that the next year was 80,000, and we've estimated that the follow-up years were ended up at about 88,000 at the high end. So in this case, we reverted to a 3-year average because it's part of it's not it's shown much less impact on any sort of issues like COVID because I think they're federal government leases, so they're nice to have. Our sorry, I got a cold somehow. 84,000 is our estimated NOI for this from the same process I described earlier, and at a cap rate of 5%, that is 1,680,000, and that's our verbal request, 1,680,000. I think that this parking lot is probably one of the ones that performed much better during COVID than most any in the city, and the building leases were long term with required parking. One of the few occasions where I've seen a bad performing income earning lease be an asset was during times of trouble, but that's what it is. So 1,680,000, which is an 84,000 NOI at 5%.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Kupfer, have you questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Regarding your NOI figure, can you speak to the discrepancy between what's been reported at 143,000 and your estimate at 84,000?
Where's the source of the 143?
It's what was submitted by the property owner.
Can you direct me to the page where that so I can read it?
It's on my page 12.
Okay.
It was identified by Miss Knight in her questioning.
And you'll note on that document, it's not page 13, you mean?
I'm showing page 12, but we could have different page numbers, I suppose.
Okay. Maybe I got the wrong year here. Let's just see. Oh, you're right. I'm had a different report open. Page 12. Yes, obviously it's the same issue I asked you a question about earlier, so I thought that asked and answered questions would apply, but we'll go through it again. The roll, it says the roll number, and then it says 175 Hargrave with 1405. 1405 is the building identifier for 175 Hargrave. So it's with the Hargrave income. And this is not the income for the lot. This is the income that comes out of 175 Hargrave for parking for any and all of the 4 other lots. And now in that number, 175 Hargrave is connected by an underground pathway to 330 St. Mary. So people park in the underground parking at 330 St. Mary and then walk in the underground to 175 Hargrave, where they have their offices. That income then shows up in this statement, not the statement where it belongs, which is 330 St. Mary. This is the error we spoke of, and I asked questions of earlier. This is also the same statement that you had said you're not relying on it. Just clarify where we're at with it. It's multiple property income.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was my only question.
Thank you. Ms. Questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Knight, questions?
No, sir.
Mr. Neufeld, I'm looking at the income and expense analysis as submitted. And as the one we've been referring to at page 12, you indicated that relates to all of the parking. On the $143,796.58, it shows expenses of just under $40,000. Is that a realistic expense ratio? The 40 divided by 143, which would be 27% expense ratio?
No, what it is this is the calculation done by the parking management company. So they had the income of the parking from 175 Hargraves building, and then they took their commission off. That's the 39,000, their commissions and expenses. So they did not include property taxes for one, and which is a major one, as well as any other cost the owner has to bear. So it's a partial expense statement. The actual, regardless of how this was being calculated, probably you would have to add on another about 30. What was the year on this? Was 22. So that's going to be taxes, which aren't there. About $39,000 for taxes. So then the minimum expense ratio is going to be 54.5%. I apologize. It's our garbage that you're looking at.
I'm just trying to get my head around. That's why I'm pausing here as I'm going back and forth between the financial statements, which I can't make head or tail of, to be honest with you, but I'll trust your verbal recitation of the net income, and that will end my questions. Mr. Kupfer, any summary?
No, sir.
Mr. Neufeld?
Again, it's the same three things. We didn't have the great breakdowns in our statements. It's all we had. So we're not committing a violation of the act, but we could have been more helpful to this process. That's going to be corrected in upcoming years with our change in property management. And the next issue being that, land sales, not highest and best use. You can't change it. It's parking lot. It will be parking lot, and the assessor can't change it. And simply because 1 year, it's bad for them. Most parking lots suffered horribly from COVID. I was one of the few people who was deemed necessary services. I don't know why, but I could work and come into the office, and it was wonderful to have no traffic, empty parking lots, my parkade downstairs, 3 people in it, great. And the act contemplated that there would be changes. And that's why we reassess every 2 years. The assessor can't ignore that and change the methods as he pleases to chase the highest mythical value. Thank you.
Thank you. Having heard the evidence, that will conclude the matter, and you will be advised in writing when the decision has been made. I believe, Mr. Neufeld, that concludes your matters on the list today.
Yeah.
Thank you for your presentations.
Thank you. Bye.
And Mrs. Harland, I believe, is Mr. McCubbin present, or is he attending via Zoom?
Mr. McCubbin is present, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Can you please, well, before we swear him in, does anyone need a break before we continue?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair.
Okay, would 5 minutes do?
Yes, thank you. I'll go shut us down or take us
Okay.
offline, rather.
We can return at about 10:05 then, please, or 10:06. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, fellow panel members, and Mr. Assessor. Morning.
Good morning.
Is Mr. Kupfer back?
Yes,
Oh.
he is. Can you see him, Mr. Chair?
No, I cannot.
It's very strange. Just a moment, please. Oh, Mr. Kupfer, okay. He's back now. He should show up shortly.
Oh, okay, yeah, I've got him.
There he is, yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Harlan. Can you please affirm Mr. McCubbin for the next series of hearings, please?
Yes, he will. Mr. Applicant, would you please state your full name?
Howard Lindsay McCubbin.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you. We will turn to number 3 on the docket. That is the file number I have noted as 24-2433 with a roll number ending in 45000. I don't have a street address on this, but Mr. Kupfer, do you have that in front of you? And if so, can you please present your evidence?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is file number 24-2433. The roll number is 120-930-45000. We have no street address on file for this property. However, it's referred to as 225 Fort Street on the income statement, so we'll use that. This is a surface parking lot. It has a land area of 12,084 square feet. It has the M multiple use zoning code and a 2025 assessed value determined by our model using land of $1,422,000, which I'm recommending be confirmed today. Pages 2 and 3 of my brief show photos of the subject property. Again, it's a square-shaped lot located on Fort Street. This one is north of St. Mary's and south of Graham. Page 4 of my brief shows that we have no sales on record for this property. Pages 5, 6, and 7 pertain to an income valuation. Again, we're on land for this property. Page 8 of my brief shows our land sales comparables. This will look familiar. Because we're south of Portage here again, I would recommend leaning on comparables 3, 4, and 5. They're all quite close in proximity to the subject property. That's 175 Donald, 330 Donald, and 240 St. Mary's Ave. In terms of classification, this is a 60T property, 100%, so no issues with class or liability here. That net area, 12,084 square feet, applying a net rate of $117.68 is what derives our value of $1,422,000. Pages 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 are the income and expense statement submitted by the property owner. Page 14 of my brief shows the NOI submitted for 2022, $68,814.96. And then beyond that, starting on page 15, are my photographs, again, beginning with the parking lot photographs, and then onto my land sale comparables table, beginning on page 25. So you can get an idea of where these properties are located and the orientation of them. Beyond that, I don't have any further information on the property. So again, I'll just confirm that I think the 2025 assessed value should be confirmed at $1,422,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCubbin, have you questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Kupfer, we have, I can see 42 parking stalls on this lot, is that correct?
That's what we have in our model, yes.
Okay, and it's paved?
Yes, sir.
Right. And it has been used as a parking lot for quite some time now, has it?
I believe so.
Okay. And the city has changed its methodology with respect to how they view the value of the parking lots in general this cycle.
Not to my knowledge, no.
No. But okay, in the past, have surface parking lots been done by the income approach to value by the city?
Some parking lots will have, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And you're relying on the sales that you have on page 8 of your brief to come up with a vacant land value for property by a direct comparison approach, I suspect.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Those are all the questions I have.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, have you any questions?
Just in regards to the methodology utilized, it's based on land value. So would there be any circumstance where it would be based on the income approach? You said not all parking lots are based on land value. Some are based on income approach. In what instances would that be?
In determining which value comes out as higher is the simple way to put it. If the income value is higher, the model will choose that as that which is most productive for the property. If the land value is higher than the income value, then that's what will be certified by the model. So in this case, the land value is higher than what our model determined the income value would be. So it's the land value which was certified for the 2025 roll.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Ms. Knight, questions?
And all of your, sorry, now I just lost the page. On page 5, no, your comparables, where is that now? On page 8, all of those are parking lots, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is that your only question?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
I have a question. I know this isn't the valuation methodology that has either been chosen, but hasn't been selected by the model, if I can put it that way. But at page 6, you've got page 6 and following, you've got the capitalization rates information included. None of those capitalization rate tables include parking lots. Is there a reason for that? Or can you speak to that? I know it's not part of your the methodology here, but I'm just looking at your brief.
Mm-hmm. So page 6,
Yep.
this table primarily shows outside sources. So Colliers, CBRE, and Cushman Wakefield. To my knowledge, they don't produce charts or give information regarding parking lots specifically. If they did, we would include it in our brief. To my knowledge, they do not. So we don't have a sample size of market comparables for cap rates for parking lots. Very generally speaking, at least within our model, they tend to be modeled with a lower capitalization rate, with the understanding that a surface parking lot will contain less risk than many other improved properties.
Okay, and just following up that with respect to the sales and keeping track of the sales, the land sale comparables you have at your page 8, those are all vacant lands. You said, I think, well, I'll ask you to identify are any of those parking areas or surface parking lots?
I believe all of them are parking lots. At least
No.
at the time of sale, they were.
Okay, and all the times of sales, I'm just looking at it, range from early 2019 to late mid 2021, if I'm reading that correctly.
That's correct.
Okay. And to your knowledge, a capitalization rate calculation wasn't performed for those properties?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have anything further. Mr. McCubbin, your evidence, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The assessor has already stated the roll number for the record, so I won't do that. File number 24-2433 does not have a property address, and the client is Royal Canadian Properties Limited. The 2025 realty assessment is $1,422,000, and we're asking for a reduction to $916,000. And that's on page 2 of my brief. With respect to the property itself, if you go to page 6, you will see aerial photograph at the bottom of that page of the property, and on the top photograph is the street view of that property. It is a rectangular shaped surface parking lot located on the east side of 4th Street between Graham Avenue and St. Mary Avenue. It contains 42 parking stalls, and it predominantly serves the tenants of the adjacent office building at 240 Graham Avenue. The site has a multiple use zoning, as the assessor had stated, and the total land area is 12,084 square feet. Access and egress is provided off 4th Street. Now, with respect to the highs and breast use, Mr. Chairman, the current use as a parking lot is considered its highest and best use. We see no potential for this property being developed in the next 2 to 5 years. At least there's no talk about it. And so that development horizon for something that's permittable under the multiple use zoning can be way off. Could be a matter of 10 years, 20, 30 years, depending. But there are a lot of vacant surface parking lots in the city, in the downtown core area, as you all already know. So the highest and best use, Mr. Chairman, is based on the income that it derives from parking and its use, its current use. We will be, and that being the case, Mr. Chairman, we will be using the income approach to value as has been used in the past by the city. In general, parking lots suffered a hit during the pandemic and after the pandemic, and they still continue to suffer a loss of income because of the office situation in general downtown. A lot of people are not coming back to work remotely, etc. But we do feel that the act allows for revising values, Mr. Chairman, every 2 years. So the city would have an opportunity, I mean, the value, yes, the value can trend down over a cycle and then trend back up again. But you have to go with what the market is telling you at the time. You simply just don't default to a land value because you feel that income is not supported by land sales. It just doesn't make sense when you're looking at it from an income perspective. In regards to the value for this property, Mr. Chairman, if you go to page 10 of my brief, the income approach value is probably the most widely accepted and easy on the method of determining the value of an income producing property, which this is. After a review of the Altus downtown parking study and specifically the reported rates downtown, a net rate per stall of $100 will be used to estimate the net operating income of the subject property. So that's $100 even, a net rate. So that gives us 42 stalls times $100 per stall times 12 months gives you $50,400. And taking into consideration the Altus downtown parking study, a capitalization rate of 5.5% will be used to convert the net operating income into an April the 1st, 2023 market value. As I've said before, please note that there's no indication there's any intent to redevelop the site in the near future. So the value derived by the income approach is $916,000 rounded. I would like just to go over briefly, and hopefully it applies to the entirety of the properties on the docket, Mr. Chairman, because they're all surface parking that I'm dealing with today. So if I can just turn your attention to the submitted Altus 2025 downtown parking study, please.
Okay, just give me a moment, please. Wait till everyone's got there. Okay. Everyone have that in front of them?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead, please, Mr. McCubbin.
Okay, thank you. Just going to page 1 of the study, you'll see the downtown parking supply is composed of on-street parking, municipally owned parking, and privately owned surface and garage parking. The city of Winnipeg operates about 15% of the overall parking supply in Winnipeg. This study will focus on privately owned vehicle parking, which makes up about 85% of the current supply. Gives you some key facts. I'm not going to go through that with respect to downtown parking. You can read that at your own speed. Page 2, it gives us the study area, what that area is composed of. You can see the various use sectors that are involved. Just in general, on page 4, parking rates typically reflect demand. So a simple rule is that in high demand areas, rates will be higher. Impark manages the largest number of parking lots across the city of Winnipeg. Therefore, we will rely on their rates as the best indicator of rates in downtown Winnipeg as of the valuation date of April 1st, 2023. We use the monthly unreserved rate as the standard for estimating monthly gross operating parking income. Parking types vary within the market. As an example, rates may be charged on a daily, hourly, or monthly basis, and within the monthly category, rates can vary as there are substantial differences between reserved, unreserved, and 24-hour parking. Unreserved monthly parking is the most common type of parking and is therefore the standard. There are instances where the valuator may consider hourly and or daily rates. I will be focusing, Mr. Chairman, in this report primarily on page 8, the south downtown area for properties on the brief, because that's where all the properties are located. So we'll be looking at our studies. It covers the south downtown parking rate. And that's located on page 8 of my brief. Sorry, on page 8 of the downtown parking study. If you look at, go right to the bottom of the page, Mr. Chairman, you will see for surface specifically, and it should be in gray there, the average is 182.28, the minimum is 25, and the maximum is 260 in this general vicinity. With respect to operations, again, if you would like to, you can go through the parking management and operations. I'm not going to read that verbatim, but I think it's important to look at page 10, because the rates that are reported, Mr. Chairman, on page 8 are all gross rates. So we have to arrive at a net rate for the subject property. I chose, in this instant, for this specific parking lot, I chose $100 a square foot and using a 50% expense ratio to arrive at that. So, and with respect to that expense ratio, Mr. Chairman, on page 10, it gives you sort of a summary of what's going on and typically what an expense ratio for a parking lot should be. Quickly read it. Operating a parking facility can be expensive. Operating expenses increase due to factors such as weather, vandalism, asset depreciation, supply costs, maintenance and repair costs, labor costs, utility rates, and taxes. The following are lists of typical expenses for a parking facility. You can see it outlined there. Just skipping down to the second to last paragraph, we developed an expense ratio model that looks at the individual expense items across a sample of properties. We believe that in this model and methodology adequately isolates individual expense items across the sample more accurately than looking at one property's expenses in totality. And then there's some order of element and fairness when you were looking at valuing all of the properties also. In general, we accept that realty taxes alone can account for up to 20% of the expenses for a parking operator. Added to this would be line items such as insurance, management, utilities, cleaning, snow clearing, repairs, and maintenance. We have used end 2017 operating expenses. Based on sample of 9 surface parking lots, the study predicts that the median expense ratio using unadjusted rates supplied by the property owners from non-leased properties was 46 and 19. This amount also included any expenses, business taxes were available, and which we do not believe the city adjusts for in their model. And if they were dealing with it in this instant by income approach to value, which they're not. On page 11, it gives you a look at the expense ratio, Mr. Chairman, for surface parking, the table on the top. And you can see the resulting median is 49.36, the average is 42, and the minimum being 36.54% and a maximum of 82. Then those two are the outliers. We chose, which is a better number to look at, is the median in this instance rather than the average. But in this case, the average and the median are fairly close, but we've chosen the median, and I've chosen 50%. It's the expense ratio for the surface parking in the general vicinity, which will be applied to all my properties. I think that should be enough with respect to the expense ratio for the house. With respect to capitalization rate, Mr. Chairman, that can be found on page 18 of the presentation, the capitalization rate study. And again, I'm not going to go through all these properties one by one, but you can see the associated addresses with the properties, Mr. Chairman, and it's on page 19. And you can see the resulting cap rate calculation based on the information that we have in our office. And you can see the cap rates range anywhere from 5.
Sorry, what page is that?
Sorry, page 19 of my of the downtown parking study.
Oh, okay. I'm in the wrong page. Okay. Okay, got it now. Thank you.
Okay. And you can see on in the capitalization rate column, you can see the lowest cap rate derived from these sales was 5.08%, and with the highest being 6.73%. Just getting back to the brief. Page 10 of my brief, you can see that we've applied a capitalization rate for this property of 5.5%. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chairman. I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. McCubbin. Mr. Kupfer, questions?
Just a couple. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sticking with the Altus downtown parking study, on pages 20 and 21, you seem to supply some definitions and tests for highest and best use. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So our 4 tests here shown on page 20 include physically possible, legally permissible, financially feasible, and produces the highest property value, correct?
Yes.
So under which of these 4 tests have you determined or drawn the conclusion from that this property should be based on the income value, or that development is not probable or likely?
We're looking at the 4th.
The 4th test that produces
Yeah.
the highest property value?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, we're looking at from the perspective of it being a parking lot as it's currently used for surface parking with income.
Okay, thank you. Turning back to your brief, you've derived, if I'm reading this right, a net operating income of $50,400 based on your sample size of the downtown parking lot study. Is that correct?
That's correct. In the general, in the south of Portage.
Okay. You include the income and expense mailer, as I have. Looks like you have 2021 and 2022.
Right.
So 2021 is showing an NOI of 72,571. And 2022 is showing an NOI of 68,814. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Have you done any sort of reconciliation, or can you speak to why the NOI might be so much higher for this property than what is indicated by the parking rate study?
With respect to the parking revenue for the property, as it states on March the 24th, 2022, you can see it's $90,000 there. My reconciliation, and in all fairness, Mr. Chairman, treating all of these parking lots in a very similar fashion by the income approach to value, we're relying essentially on our parking rate study, which some of this information was included. There is a difference, you're correct, in what was reported versus what we've arrived at with respect to net operating income for the property, and that's essentially going with a gross rate of around $200 per parking stall and applying a 50% expense ratio right across the board. So that there may be differences with respect to what was reported versus what's actually arrived at by the income approach value in terms of the NOI. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, any questions?
So I can't remember which page it was. You were talking about the 46.19 expenses, but that included the business taxes that the city doesn't. Is that correct?
Yeah, are you speaking, you're going back to the study, I suspect?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yeah, the 46.19%, yeah. You know, the last line there in that paragraph, Mr. Chairman, this amount's also included in the expenses, business taxes when available. And I guess the statement, we felt that the city was going to use the income approach to value. That's why that statement is in there. And we do not believe the city adjusts for it in their model. But they didn't do it by model. This specific parking lot presentation here today is done by applying vacant land sales and coming up with a value.
So in your rate, where you're using a 50% expense rate, are you including those business taxes in that 50%?
Yes, in some of the analysis that we've done, business taxes has been used. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, wherever we can get that information.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Anderson, questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
So would it be safe to say, Mr. McCubbin, that you are relying on the Altus downtown parking study to produce a, to use want of a better word, a modeled valuation based on an estimated or average net operating income as opposed to the actual net operating income? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we're not, I mean, yeah, this is a site-specific evaluation of the property, Mr. Chairman, and I am relying on the Altus downtown parking study. And in some cases, the NOI will be higher as reported, and in some cases it will be lower. But we, to be fair and in general terms, in treatment of parking, surface parking lots, I've gone with downtown parking study in this instance. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further. Mr. Kupfer, any summary?
None for me, thank you.
Mr. McCubbin.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if it's appropriate, and I'd like to just make a quick summary here. And I did submit board orders. I'm not sure if you're willing to allow that in, and it's board orders with respect to surface parking lot, Mr. Chairman, that would heard by this board that took place on October the 8th. And would you allow that? Would you like me to comment on that as part of my summation, or?
I can tell you that the board is not prepared to consider, or as a practice, the board doesn't consider previous board orders just because the deliberations are not something that are before the board with respect to that. They will be largely irrelevant to our process. You may summarize as you see fit, but we're not going to give much weight, if any weight, to previous board orders. We're not bound by those precedents, and we're not going to consider them.
Okay, very good. In summary, Mr. Chairman, and this summary should be taken for all the properties in the docket. We feel that the assessment department erred in its valuation of surface parking lots for this cycle. Office buildings were certainly negatively affected. People coming downtown since the pandemic started, there has been less numbers. And that will translate into a diminished value in terms of the income from some properties also, for parkades also, because people come downtown, they park downtown and utilize parking stalls unless they're on a contract and they can't get out of it. So we feel that the income approach is the best approach to use, Mr. Chairman. Treats all the properties the same, and there's some logic to it. There is a lot of logic to it. Also, what I was presenting there in terms of the board order, the hearing that took place on October the 8th, it's just to say that when you look at the methodology, and I assume that the board, how they came up with the value, they looked at the way Altus assessed these parking lots, and in a lot of cases, they looked at Altus's evidence with respect to surface parking lot valuation by the income approach to value for the cycle, and that's my submission.
Thank you. Having heard the evidence, we will conclude that matter. And before we move on to number 4, Mrs. Harlan, do you need to take a break, or is this, would you like to take a break just to, you sound like you got a cough going.
Yes, please, Mr. Chair, just a moment, please.
Okay. Thank you. We'll call the meeting back to order then and move to number 4 on the docket. I have a street address of 116 Edmonton here. Before we do, however, Mr. McCubbin, during the last hearing, you presented some evidence with respect to the Altus downtown parking study and asked if it could be applied to all of the remaining properties. Certainly that's something that we can do as long as that is referenced at the start of the hearing, or maybe at the start of your presentation. If you can just indicate that you would like that evidence applied, we can certainly do that, and on the recording, it will reflect that. Is that acceptable as well, Mrs. Harland?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. McCubbin, or the applicant had submitted that as rebuttal evidence. Is that correct?
No.
Oh.
No, that's the no, not the board order. The downtown parking study is what I was referring to. That just so we don't have to go through it in the same questions every time. The board will consider it having been read in for every, as long as it's referenced at the start of every hearing.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. McCubbin, that's acceptable to you?
That's acceptable, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you. Then, Mr. Kupfer, can you lead us through your brief here, your evidence with respect to the street address 116 Edmonton Street?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. This is file number 24-2262. The roll number is 1209-359-0100. The street address is 116 Edmonton Street, and the owner is Peregrine Equities Limited. This is again a surface parking lot with the zoning of M, multiple use. The land area on file is 13,299 square feet. And we have a 2025 modeled assessment, again using land value of $1,396,000, which I'm recommending be confirmed today. Pages 2 and 3 of my brief show photos of the subject parking lot. This parking lot is just north of Broadway and south of York Avenue. So again, we're looking at the South Portage area. Page 4 of my brief shows the sales history. I haven't investigated this 2006 sale. It's quite old, but given the sale price, I would assume that this was part of a package sale. It's not something that's being relied upon for this valuation. Pages 5, 6, and 7 of my brief pertain to the income value and income approach. Page 8 of my brief shows our land sales comparables. The table should be looking familiar to you by now. I haven't been switching any comparables in and out. So as we get further and further south, I would say that 175 Donald and 240 St. Mary's are our closest properties in terms of proximity to the subject. Looking at classification, we have no issue with class and liability. The property is class 60T, Again, 13,299 square feet of area. We have a modeled rate just under $105 a foot, which is giving us our total assessed value of $1,396,000. Beyond that, starting on page 9, I've included the income expense information as submitted by the property owner. Not much to see here. On page 11, it shows the net operating income, I believe, $58,205. I've included the same photos for your reference of all of my comparables, including maps and outlines, so you can get a view of the surrounding properties, the orientation, that sort of thing. And beyond that, I have no other information on the property. So again, I'll confirm that 2025 assessed value should be confirmed at $1,396,000. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Mr. McCubbin, have you any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bird, just turning, I'd like to turn your attention to page 8 of your presentation. Again, the same tables was used with respect to the sales for all these properties, and this one in particular. We've gone over those sales previously. The model, the value was modeled using vacant land sales. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
With a total disregard for any income that may be reported on properties for parkings or for surface parking lots.
The income stream would have produced a lower value than the land sales. So it was the land sale that was certified and used by our model. Yes.
Okay, I'm not going to belabor that point. I think the board has in hand my line of questioning with respect to the methodology used, and I'd like that applied to the rest of the properties also. And it was essentially just vacant sales that were used. Again, you confirm that. I have no other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, questions?
On your page 11, that's the net income showing for 2022 for this property for the 44 stalls. Would there be any other expenses that would come off of that 58,000? Because that works out to 110.24 per lot of income.
I can't see any missing expenses from this statement. I think as Mr. McCubbin touched on, your big ones for vacant lots are generally property taxes and snow clearing. It looks like both of those have been included.
Right, they're both on there, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, questions?
I have no question. Thank you.
And
I don't have any questions either. Then Mr. McCubbin, can you present your brief, please?
no, thank you. I'd like to enter my brief as evidence, file number 24-2262 for roll number 120-935-90100. Client's name is Morgard Corporation, Manitoba. And property address is 116 Edmonton. And this is a 44 stall parking, surface parking lot, Mr. Chairman. It's multiple use sector zoned. The current assessed value is $1,396,000. And that's the 2025 roll value is $1,396,000. And we're asking for a reduction to $864,000. Page 7 describes the improvements. It's a 44 stall parking lot, and it's leased in park. Access and egress is provided only via the publicly owned alleyway along the west side. There's no curb cut across Edmonton, so you have to come down the alleyway to get into this parking lot. You can't get it off of Edmonton Street. Highest and best use is for its current use as a parking lot, Mr. Chairman, and we've done this by income approach to value. You've heard my submission previously. I'd like to carry forward with respect to the parking, downtown parking study that we did. I'd like to reference that in relation to the stall rate that was applied here from the South Portage Avenue area. We've reduced the stall rate to $90 per square foot, sorry, $90 per stall per month for this specific property. There is a range in that area, and we think this is in the lower end of the range. So 44 stalls at $90 per stall times 12 months gives us an NOI of $47,520, and applying the capitalization rate of 5.5%, which I touched on from the downtown parking study, we're arrived at a value, Mr. Chairman, of $864,000. And that's my presentation, and I'm open questions.
Thank you, Mr. McCubbin. Mr. Kupfer, questions?
Just one, I think, on this go around. It's effectively the same question that Mr. McCubbin asked me, but in regards to land rates, did Altus perform any sort of land analysis or look at comparables for this property or any of the other parking lots we'll be looking at today?
Yes, we have. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the downtown parking study in totality. We looked at comparables. We used income, and the income that we can that was reported on these properties. We also used information from Impart. We did not, for the purposes of this exercise, use vacant land sales to arrive at values for these income-producing properties. No, we didn't.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's my only question.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Knight, questions?
So based on page 15, where it shows the 58,205, which works out to 110.24 per lot.
Oh, sorry, you're
On your page 15,
my page 15 of my direct. Okay, sorry.
yeah, which shows the 58,205.63.
Page 15. My.
You
Oh,
show the
sorry.
total-
Yes.
That's the total income. So if
That's-
you divided that by 44 lots, it's 110.24 per lot. So if we were going to do your calculation using the 110, the total value would end up at 1,056,000. So how do you come up with the 90 when this is showing 110?
Well, I looked at the location of this lot, Mr. Chairman, and the access for this particular property, and we felt that it should be lower in comparison to other properties in the vicinity.
Okay.
And so I reduced, we do have on, referencing the downtown parking study again, we do have a range within that for surface parking. And we're well within that range for this property. And the reasons I give you are for the lower rate on this property.
Okay, thank you.
Can you give me one moment? I'm going to close the door. Thank you. Ms. Anderson, sorry, my turn. The $90 per lot, do you have any study now, or per stall? Do you have any study that Mr. McCubbin, that would indicate that there is a reduced price for lots that might not have access onto Broadway or onto a major street?
No, we do not have, we don't get that specific. Again, this will be sort of based on my experience and knowledge. And we feel it's reasonable. You have to differentiate between lots also, because they're not all in the same location. And in the downtown area, you can have desirability, higher desirability a block or two away, or lower desirability. So we try to focus in specifically on the location of the property when applying a rate.
Okay. And on that basis, this has a very good location. Would you agree that being as close as it is to 405 Broadway and the law courts?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have anything further. Mr. Kupfer, any summary?
No, sir.
Mr. McCubbin?
No, Mr. Chairman, just the summary that I touched on before. I'd like to carry through with respect to the way parking lots should be treated by any component. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Chair, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Fine, then we'll conclude that matter and move on to number 5 on the list. That is the roll number that ends in 07500. It's noted on the file as an Edmonton Street, but no specific street address. Mr. Kupfer, if you can present your evidence, please, on that.
This is file number 24-2429. Roll number 1209-360-7500. The street address, as you stated, Mr. Chairman, is just Edmonton Street for this property. It's located right on the corner of St. Mary and Edmonton. So we are north of York and south of Graham, quite close to the convention center here. This is another surface parking lot with the M multiple use zoning code. It's a larger lot at the land area of 29,785 square feet. And we have a 2025 model driven assessment, again using land value of $3,276,000 that I'm going to recommend be confirmed today. Pages 2, 3, and 4 of my brief show photos of the subject property. You can see there it's at the intersection of Edmonton and St. Mary, as I've described. Page 5 of my brief shows the sales history. We have nothing recent here. I'd note just the 2005 sale of $1.5 million. I haven't investigated it myself due to the age of the sale. Pages 6 through 8 all pertain to income valuation. And page 9 of my brief, again, shows the same land sale comparables that you've been looking at all day. Nothing new to see here. Again, I would note that the zoning for the subject property is M, which aligns with comparables 2 through 5 of my land sale comparables chart. The subject property is classed 60T, 100%, and using a net rate of just a penny under $110, we arrive at $3,276,000 for this subject property. And once again, I've included the income and expense information as submitted by the property owner on pages 10 through 11. And the remainder of the brief is supporting information, photos, and maps of all of my comparables for your review. And that's all I have on this property today. So again, I'll confirm that 2025 assessed value should be confirmed at $3,276,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kupfer. Mr. McCubbin, questions?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kupfer, this is a surface parking lot being used as surface parking, subject property.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? Yep.
Yes.
And the method that you use was vacant land sales to arrive at the value of this property.
Correct.
Okay, those are all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Knight?
On the piece that you added about the income from Edmonton Street that the client did themselves, you're showing the net operating income 104,460.35. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'm looking at the same page. That's page 10 on your brief. The expense ratio would appear to be about 50, 55, 56% on that. Have you had an opportunity to review the expenses listed here, Mr. Kupfer?
I'm reviewing it now. Nothing stands out to me as being particularly egregious here. It's not uncommon to see expense ratios range from 40 to 55%. So this one is a bit on the higher end, but nothing that stands out to me that shouldn't be there.
Okay, thank you. That was all I had to clarify. Mr. McCubbin, your evidence, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. File number 24-2429, roll number 12093607500. Client is Lakeview Management Inc., Manitoba. Property address is 0 Edmonton Street. The site size is 29,785 square feet. It's on multiple use sector. The assessment year is 2025. The current realty assessment, Mr. Chairman, is $3,276,000, and we're asking for a reduction to $2,544,000. Page 6 of my brief shows you where the property is located, and the assessor has gone through that already. So I don't want to belabor that point. It shows you some photographs. Page 7 gives you a brief description of the subject property. And with respect to the highest and best use, Mr. Chairman, we're valuing it based, we're consider its current use as a parking lot as its highest and best use, supporting larger office properties in the vicinity. Just to turn to the valuation on this specific property, Mr. Chairman. Again, we looked at specifically the south downtown parking rate segment of our report to arrive at a rate of $110 per stall. Based on its location, that's times 106 stall, we arrive at a net operating income of $139,920. Again, this is treating all properties relatively similar in terms of valuation with respect to rates and the expense ratio. Expense ratio used here, Mr. Chairman, is 50% to come up to arrive at that $110 per stall. So that's a NOI per stall, $110. We arrive at a net operating income, if I stated, of $139,920 for this property, and applying the capitalization rate, as I've discussed from our study of 5.5%, we arrive at a value of $2,544,000, and we ask you to lower the value to that amount. I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Mr. McCubbin. Mr. Kupfer, questions?
I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
And Ms. Knight, questions?
No, sir.
Ms. Anderson, questions?
I just note that on your page 10, you note 106 stalls, and the assessment records indicate 104 stalls. Just wondering.
Yeah, I don't know where that discrepancy comes from. We're going with our numbers, and I guess the city is not even regarding it by the income approach to value. So I'm not sure about the city's numbers.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
Thank you. I was wondering about that as well, but I don't have anything in addition to ask. Mr. Kupfer, any summary?
No need. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McCubbin?
None for me, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, then we will conclude that matter and move on to the item at number 6 on the docket. That being file number 242014 and a roll number ending in 57000. Again, I don't have a street address for this matter. It's on Donald, but if Mr. Kupfer, you could please present your evidence on this roll number.
This is file number 24-2014. The roll number is 1209-3357000. As you stated, Mr. Chairman, we just have Donald Street as the street address and the owner as Augie Investments Limited. This is another surface parking lot with the M multiple use zoning code, a land area of 27,205 square feet, and a 2025 model driven assessment of $3,073,000 using land value. So where are we on Donald Street? This one is just north of Broadway and south of York. So you can get an idea of the orientation here based on my photos on pages 2 and 3. Page 4 of my brief shows, again, sales history. Not much to speak on here. There was a transaction in 2011 with consideration of $1. So generally that means it's not an arm's length transaction. Pages 5, 6, and 7 pertain to the income valuation, and then beginning again on page 8, you'll see the same familiar list of land sale comparables that we've selected for our downtown analysis here. We have, again, Class 60T classification for the property, so no issues with class or liability. Again, that net area is 27,205 square feet, so it is a larger parcel. And our model's assigned a rate per foot of $112.96, which is how you get to that total value of $3,073,000, which I'm going to recommend be confirmed today. Beyond that, I've included again the income and expense information as submitted by the property owner, which generally pertains more to an income valuation, which we have not provided today. And beyond that, starting on page 13, are all my photos of the comparable properties for your reference. So again, I'd just like to confirm our model value of $3,073,000, and I believe it should be confirmed today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCubbin, questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kupfer, the subject property is a surface parking lot. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's done by the direct comparison approach, derived value.
Yes, sir.
With respect to the size of the lot, it's 27,205 square feet, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Kupfer, would you agree that depending on the configuration, access points and everything with regard to the surface parking lot, there can be differences in the overall net use of that specific lot for surface parking purposes? In other words, you can have, just to simplify the question, you can have 2 lots that have a capacity of 50 parking stalls, but one lot can be 10,000 square foot higher or larger than the other lot, depending on the configuration and the access points and everything with respect to a parking lot. Would you agree with that general statement?
Yes, I would.
Okay, those are all the questions I have. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, have you any questions?
Again, I just noted discrepancy in the number of stalls. On the return, the applicant is indicating, the owner, I should say, reports 80 stalls, and the assessment record seems to indicate 90. I'm just wondering if you have any information in regards to why there would be this discrepancy.
I don't. Again, we'll generally take our information from what's being submitted. In this case, we haven't performed an income valuation, so the stall count isn't being measured in our valuation, which is just land area times land value. So the stall count I haven't bothered to confirm for this hearing.
Okay, thank you. I have no other questions. Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you. Ms. Knight.
So on page 3, where's the entrance to this parking lot?
It's a fair question. It would have to be either on Donald or back through the back lane there. I don't have.
Yeah, because
can't tell
I
you
don't
specifically.
like the only thing I see is that white van by that, what I think is Pizza Hut, but I'm not 100% positive on that. So is that 2 lanes so that they come in there, or is that just 1 lane going out? I just can't figure that out. Because I can't see it.
Looks
Oh,
like on
wait a
page,
minute. No, okay, I see it now on your page 2.
yeah, looks like that's where our entrance would be. So that would be right on Donald Street.
Okay, okay, good. Thank you. That's all I wanted.
Hey, thank you. I just have a question with respect to the income and expense mailer that was submitted. And as part of your brief, the bulk of the expenses appear to be property taxes. There is nothing else with respect to snow clearing, $3,000 for hydro, $1,000 for insurance, showing a net operating income of $47,518. Is that the only, or is this the only income and expense mailer that you had to present today? It just seems as though the expense mailer is lacking, shall we say.
No, I'd agree with that, Mr. Chairman. It's all that was submitted for the 2022 assessment cycle, so that's what we've gone with here to be consistent.
Okay.
If I was doing an income valuation here and I saw something like this that may not be fully complete, generally my process would be to look at the last 3 years and try and stabilize that to try and see if it's an inconsistency in 1 year or if that's actually a fairly consistent expense ratio, which looks high here. But again, we're on land value, so I haven't placed weight on the site-specific financials for this property.
Okay, fair enough, thank you. I don't have anything further. Mr. McCubbin, your evidence, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. For the record, file number 24-2014. The address is 0 Donald Street. Realty roll number is 120-933-5700. Page 2 of my brief, Mr. Chairman. Augie Investments Limited is a client. It's zoned M, multiple use sector. The site area is 27,205 square feet. And the 2025 realty assessment is $3,073,000, and we're asking it to be reduced to $2,140,000. Page 6 and 7 shows you photographs and a general brief description of the subject property, Mr. Chairman. The highest and best use of this property is, as it exists, is use as a parking lot. Page 10 has the income approach to value, and that's the approach we use, Mr. Chairman, to arrive at value for this income producing property. You'll see the net operating income and the way it was calculated, 90 stalls. And I know there were some questions about the 90 stalls. In our historical records, Mr. Chairman, it's been 90 stalls. So that's what we went with in terms of valuing this property. I didn't personally go out and count the stalls this time around, but we've based our information on previous information that was submitted and the city's information also. So we were using 90 stalls for this property at $1.09 per stall. That's the net income. So translating that to gross income, you're looking at about $2.18 per stall gross, using a 50% expense ratio. So we arrive at an NOI, Mr. Chairman, of $117,720, and applying our capitalization rate, which is part of our study, and that I've talked about, at 5.5%. The value arrived at is $2,140,000, and I have attached in my brief, Mr. Chairman, from page 13 onwards, just the income and expense statements. I believe I provide one extra year, the 2021, which showed a negative operating income. We based our valuation for this property. The valuation of this property was based primarily again on our downtown parking study and rates that were on the south Portage sector, if you will. And that's my presentation. I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kupfer, have you any questions?
I don't think I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Knight, questions?
Good, thank you.
And I don't have any questions. Mr. Kupfer, any summary?
No, sir. Thank you.
Mr. McCubbin, any summary?
No, thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Then we will conclude this matter and move on to item 7 on the docket. That is the item ending, or the roll number ending in 9500, Donald Street. I see that there is as well a non-cooperation as a preliminary matter on this matter. So if Mr. Kupfer, you can introduce the property and present the evidence with respect to the non-cooperation, please.
So this is file number 24-2419. The roll number is 1209-253-9500. Street address is Donald Street, and the owner is 64 Donald Nominee Incorporated. We've requested non-compliance on this property. Beginning on my page 9, is our information regarding income and expense information. So beginning with the letter, which would have been sent to the property owner, down to page 13, showing that the information has not been filled out by the property owner for this cycle. And that's through to page 20. So from what I can see on this property, we've had a failure to return income and expense information, and that's why we've requested the non-compliance here today. Thank you.
Mr. McCubbin, have you any questions with respect to the non-compliance issue?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kupfer, looking at the documents that you presented with respect to non-compliance, you see it begins page 9 of your presentation, right?
Yes, sir.
And it goes all the way to page 17.
20.
Sorry, 20, right? Did you have a signature with respect to the information that was received by the property owner?
No, we have no delivery signature for this property.
You have no delivery signature. So you don't know for certain whether this was delivered to the property owner or if they received it.
All I can say is it would have been mailed out to the mailing address that we have on file, provided by the property owner. I can't say whether they opened it or received it.
Okay. But generally, when asking for non-compliance, the assessment department usually provides those signatures, don't they?
If we have one, it certainly makes for a stronger case. In this case, we don't, unfortunately.
Those are all the questions I have.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, do you have any questions on the non-compliance issue?
Yes, I do. Thank you. On page 11 of your evidence, the letter that was sent to the property owner has a number identified, a tracking number identified at the top for Canada Post. And I'm just wondering if anything you have no material in your submission in regards to that tracking number from Canada Post. Just wondering.
Correct. Yeah, so it doesn't look like the tracking information was included as part of the evidence, other than that tracking number provided on the top of the letters. The first letter being the one that would have been sent out first, starting on page 9. You can see the date there, April 13th. And that second letter that you've identified, dated June 9th, which is a follow-up letter we send if we still haven't received income and expense information close to the deadline date.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, questions?
Just the June 9th letter, did that actually go out by registered mail or didn't it? Because you've put that number on there, not the city. So do we know that it actually went out by registered mail? Because we have no proof of it.
Well, there's no tracking number on the first letter. There is on the second letter. And again, I didn't add that to either of these, but that indicates to me that the second letter would have had a tracking number and the first one didn't.
Was that tracking number added after the letter was done or before the letter was done?
I can't state with certainty.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I have a question here, Mr. Kupfer, and I'm going to have to refer you to Mr. McCubbin's brief here, because Mr. McCubbin's brief at page 13 and following shows an income and expense mailer partially completed with respect to this roll number, with a note saying on the first page of page 13, due date May of 2022, and then it's signed April 29th, 2022, and it appears to have been received on page 14, May 5th, 2022. Can you comment on that? Like that appears to show that it was filled out. Have you had a chance to look at that?
I'm just looking at it right now, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So this appears to be the 2021 mailer And Mr. McCubbin's included from page 13 onwards, which is of course due in 2022.
Right, okay.
Our non-compliance request is due to the 2022 mailer not being filled out and returned, which would have been due in 2023. So I
Okay,
believe Mr. McCubbin's simply included the previous year's income and expense mailer.
okay, yes, I see now, City of Winnipeg Assessment and Taxation 2021 at page 13 at the top. I hadn't read that a little bit there, but okay, thank you. I don't have anything further. Mr. McCubbin, have you any evidence on the non-compliance issue?
No, I don't. I don't have any evidence with respect to that.
Okay, then what we'll do is we'll have a short recess to determine our position and what the panel's decision will be, and we'll call you back shortly with our ruling. So, Mrs. Harland, if we can take a short recess in camera, please, so we can discuss this. Thank you. We'll call this meeting back to order. With respect to the application to have a penalty or the burden of proof for non-cooperation reversed under section 53 sub 3, our decision is that the burden of proof will not shift in these circumstances. So Mr. Kupfer, would you please, we're not going to be providing a relief under section 53. The burden of proof will remain with the City Assessment and Taxation Department. So Mr. Kupfer, if you could continue with your presentation, please.
File number 24-2419. Our roll number is 1209-253-9500. We are again on Donald Street. I believe now we are south of Broadway and north of Assiniboine. The owner is 64 Donald Nominee Incorporated. This is again a surface parking lot. The zoning here is D for downtown living, and a land area of 18,050 square feet is on file here for this property. And we have a 2025 assessed value of $1,715,000, which I'm going to recommend be confirmed today. Pages 2 and 3 of my brief show the location of the subject property, as well as the orientation. You can see it's a rectangular lot, and access appears to be off of Donald Street. Page 4 of my brief shows the subject sale history. We do have a fairly recent sale on this property from September of 2022, with consideration and sworn value of $1.5 million. Pages 5, 6, and 7 of my brief again pertain to income valuation. And then page 8 of my brief contains the same land sale comparables that I've shown throughout the day, as well as a breakdown by classification and by rate per foot. So this one is being modeled a bit lower than some of the other properties we've seen today, as you can see, with a net rate of $95.01 over that area of 18,050 square feet, provides a land value of $1,715,000. Pages, well, we've kind of covered this already, but 9 through 20 are the incomplete income and expense information. And then page 21 onwards are all photos and maps of my comparable properties for your reference. So again, I would just like to confirm that this 2025 assessed value at $1,715,000 should be confirmed today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kupfer. Mr. McCubbin, any questions?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kupfer, this property is being used as a surface parking lot. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
With 68 stalls?
We have 68 on file, yes.
Okay. And you use a direct comparison approach to arrive at value, do you?
Yes, sir.
Those are all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Knight, questions?
No, sir.
And I don't have any questions. So, Mr. McCubbin, can you please present your brief?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. File number 24-2419, roll number 12092539500. Turning to page 2 of my brief, Mr. Chairman, the client is Kathari Group, Manitoba. The site area is 18,050 square feet and it's zoned M, multiple use sector. As you've heard, the 2025 realty assessment arrived at by the City of Winnipeg Assessment Department is $1,715,000. We're requesting a reduction to $1,484,000. Page 6 and 7, Chairman, just shows the location of the lot from relative street view, and also from the aerial photograph of the property. Just a brief description of page 7 of the property itself. We've used the income approach to value with respect to arriving at value for this property, Mr. Chairman, and that can be found on page 10 of my presentation. For this property, we've used $100 per stall, and that's $100 per stall. That's net per stall. So we arrive at a net operating income of $81,600. Applying the capitalization rate from our study that I've discussed previously, Mr. Chairman, we arrive at a value of $1,484,000. And that is my presentation. I'll ask the board to reduce the value to $1,484,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCullum. Mr. Cupford, have you any questions?
I don't see anything new here, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, any questions?
No, sir.
Ms. Anderson?
I have no questions. Thank you.
And I have no questions. Mr. Cupford, any summary required?
No, sir.
Mr. McCullum?
No, thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Then we will conclude this matter and move on to number 8 on the list. That is also on Donald Street. The roll number ending in 8300. I don't have street address, but Mr. Kupfer, if you could lead us through your brief, please.
That is file number 24-2386. The full roll number is 1209-252-8300. And the street address is simply Donald Street. The owner is 36-71705 Manitoba Limited. This is our final surface parking lot of the day. It has D downtown zoning. The land area is 24,177 square feet. And again, we have a model-driven land assessment of $2,847,000, which I'm going to recommend be confirmed today. This property is quite near to the previous property we discussed, so we are still south of Broadway and north of Assiniboine. Again, it's a rectangular shaped lot. I don't see any odd configuration or anything here, as you can see on my pages 2 to 3. Page 4 shows no recent sales for this property. Pages 5 through 7 include income information. And then page 8, we've included the same land sale comparable table here for your review and reference. So you can see the breakdown just below that. The models applied a net rate of $117.76 per foot over that 24,177 square feet to derive a value of $2,847,000 for our 2025 assessment. Beyond that, we've included the income and expense information from pages 9 through 12, and then beyond that is all supporting information, photos, and maps for my comparables. So again, I'd just like to confirm our 2025 assessment here at $2,847,000, and I believe that value should be confirmed today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kupfer. Mr. McCubbin, any questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes. Mr. Kupfer, again, this is a surface parking lot, subject property,
Yes, sir.
and it has 84 outdoor parking stalls, as far as you know.
I believe so.
And the value arrived at by the assessment department is using the direct comparison approach.
Yes, sir.
Those are all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Knight, any questions?
I just have one. You said that this property is a D like the past property. And the past property was at 9501 and this one's at 117.76. Why such a big difference in the value?
Let me just pull up my previous brief here because I'd already closed it.
Sorry,
It's okay.
just because you said it was very
95.
similar to the past property, and that's why I went, it's nowhere near the price. I mean,
The only
one's
major-
18,000 and one's 24,000 square feet, but
Yeah, that's the only major difference I can point to
Mhm.
here as to why our model might have come up with a different value, because they have the same zoning. In terms of proximity, they are quite close. One of them is just about 30% bigger than the other.
mhm.
I would posit that that's the reason why our model selected a different rate for this property.
So the bigger the parking lot, the higher the rate?
In this instance, that appears to be the case.
In an overall instance. Is that the case?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I don't have any questions. Mr. McCubbin, your evidence, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. File number 24-2386, realty roll number 1209-252-8300. Turning to second page of my brief, applied to Slate Office REIT. And the size of the property is 24,177 square feet, as you've heard. For some reason, I have a multiple sector zoning. It should be downtown living. The 2025 realty roll value placed on this property by the assessment department is $2,847,000. And we're asking for that to be reduced to $1,833,000. Page 6 and 7 of my briefs just shows the general vicinity of the, not the general vicinity, the actual location of the property. And just a brief discussion about the property itself. The highest and best use is considered to be its current use as a parking lot for the foreseeable future. Surface parking lot. On page 10 shows the actual income workup for this property, Mr. Chairman. Well, I've used a net rate per stall of $100 for this property, arriving at an NOI of $100,800. Applying the capitalization rate of 5.5% in regards to surface parking lots. We arrived at about $1,833,000. That's my presentation. I asked the board to reduce the value to $1,830,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCubbin. Mr. Kupfer, any questions?
No questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, questions?
Just remind me of when you're doing your calculations to get the $100 per stall. What are you minusing off that the city wouldn't if they were calculating it that way?
Sorry, can you repeat that question? I didn't.
So when you're calculating the $100 per stall, you're minusing a bunch of things off compared to what they actually bring in.
Right.
What is it that you minus off that the city does not minus off if they were calculating it that way?
I think in the past we've been in general agreement with respect to items that should be excluded from the expense statements. So I don't think we were ever at loggerheads with respect to that. I think we're very similar. Generally, what happened in the past, Mr. Chairman, is we might have used a different stall rate or a different capitalization than the assessment.
So your calculation to get to the $100 per stall is the same as what the city would have used if they were using that way of looking at it.
If they were using a 50%, yes, they were
Expense
using a
ratio.
50% expense ratio, because essentially what I'm saying here, the gross rate is $200.
Right, I got that. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Knight. Ms. Anderson, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. McCubbin, I'm just looking at page 16, page 17 of your brief in the appendix. Those are the actuals from this property?
Page
Sorry, the actual,
16 and 17, yes, this is the actual income and expense statement for this property.
so the net operating income for the year ending in 2023 shows a net operating income after expenses of, what is that, 87,000?
Right.
$475?
That's correct.
Okay. And you were using a net operating income of $81,600 in your calculations.
No, I'm using a net operating income of 100,800.
I'm sorry. I'm combining two pages here. But some 1,080. Yes, okay, thank you very much. I don't have anything further. Mr. Kupfer, any summary?
No summary for me, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. McCubbin?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, then we will conclude that matter. And now, having heard all of the matters on the docket, or all scheduled matters on the docket, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentations today.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Mr. Chair, I'll take us offline. May we take a 7 to 10 minute break, please?
Sure, that's okay. We'll come back. It's 11:56 now. Why don't we come back at 5 after 12?
That sounds fine. Thank you.
Okay, is that good for everybody? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hope
Nice
you
to
feel
meet you.
better. Nice to
Hope
meet you
you feel
too.
better too.
I'm on the mend.
Good.